Hi, I'm Anne Pollard, and this is the reading of my book, Cleo's Fabulous Adventures, The Realm of the Woods, Chapter 29, Part 1, Ezrael. Bacchus turned to Cleo and said, Cleo, it's now time to get you back. I think we should be on our way. Cleo sighed. Bacchus, I don't want this adventure to end. Bacchus smiled and said, Yes, it has been a grand adventure. But your real adventure is about to unfold for you in ways you cannot imagine. For now, let's begin our journey home. The path opened before them and began to lead them out of the dry and arid grasslands. Bacchus, Cleo, and Ezrael walked along the path, slightly somber that their journey was at an end. The path led them to a wonderful forest. There were trees everywhere, so many different kinds. The animals of the forest were all busy doing their thing, and there was a light, airy feeling to the whole place. The sun was shining through the canopy, and it felt warm and inviting. The sound of birds, squirrels, and other forest animals were everywhere, and it sounded so beautiful. Cleo smiled. Bacchus led them to a small clearing. Within the canopy of the trees, there was a small but cozy place. As Bacchus, Cleo, and Ezrael entered the clearing, Cleo saw a very large table set in the middle of the clearing. It was made from the trees of the forest in honor of Cleo. It was decorated with flowers, pine cones, crystals, and nuts. Cleo had to stop and take in what she was seeing. As she stood there trying to understand, all of the animals from her adventure began to gather. It was a fabulous display of all of her teachers. Cleo looked over at Bacchus and said, Bacchus, what is all of this? Bacchus nodded to Ezrael and said, Perhaps you should ask Ezrael. He's the one who did all of this. Ezrael, exclaimed Cleo, what is all of this? Ezrael smiled and said, Cleo, it's your birthday party. Cleo was so surprised. She didn't even think about her birthday after everything that had happened today. She was humbled at everything she saw. Ezrael said, Cleo, please be seated at the head of the table. There is a stump right there for you to sit on. Cleo laughed and took her seat on the stump. As she sat down, she saw Ariel coming towards her, walking on top of the table. Her pink glow was still there and lit the way for her as she made her way to Cleo. The other animals were taking their places around the table. To see all of her animal guides and teachers together was so overwhelming that Cleo cried tears of joy. Bacchus sat next to Cleo, and Ezrael sat at the other end of the table opposite her. Bacchus said, Cleo, as in all animal spirit walks, the last thing that happens is that the animal gives you something to remember them by and represent their message to you. So in that tradition, each of your animal guides has a gift for you for your birthday. We are all anxious to see what they brought. Ariel, please begin. Ariel now stood in front of Cleo on the table. Even though she was a large ant, she was still very small compared to the others. Ariel smiled and did a slight bow of her head to Cleo. Cleo, she said, you are now truly a queen, the queen you always were, but now know in your heart. You are powerful beyond your imagination, and your words are gold. So, to remind you of how much of a queen you are, I give you a crown. It is made from nature itself. It is vines woven together in love, with flowers and crystals embedded in the circle. You are not only the queen of your team, you are a queen to yourself. Always remember your power and accept that with the greatest humility. You are loved beyond measure, and your queen edict is to share that love with the world. Go forth and be you, as that is the greatest measure of a true queen. We are honored and humbled in your presence." Cleo bowed her head at Ariel. Ariel then placed the crown on Cleo's head. She felt immense gratitude and humility. "Thank you, Ariel," said Cleo. "This is such a special remembrance, and I will always cherish your words of wisdom." Ariel smiled and said, "As I will always remember your fabulous journey, Cleo." Ariel turned and took her place at the first seat beside Cleo. As Ariel took her spot, Bacchus flew over to Cleo. As he landed on the table in front of her, he said, "Cleo, you are even more beautiful than when I first saw you." Cleo smiled. "My gift to you is flower seeds. Take these seeds and plant your beautiful butterfly garden. Grow roses and beautiful flowers and invite the butterflies to come to you. Then play and have fun with them. Smell the wonderful smells and see the beauty that you create. You are a butterfly, Cleo. Spread your wings and soar to heights you have never known before." Cleo remembered her scar, and now she had no feeling about it. She knew she was beautiful, and she loved that. "Thank you, Bacchus," she said. "I will plant my garden and invite all of the butterflies to come and play with me." Bacchus smiled and flew over to his seat next to Ariel. As Bacchus settled into his spot, Chamuel stepped forward beside Cleo. In his paws he held the most beautiful bleeding heart plant. As he handed it to Cleo, he said, "Cleo, this is the bleeding heart flower. You saw this when you first entered the magical woods. It is meant to remind you of how important it is to stay in your heart and feel unconditional love. Your heart is the power of you, and you can use your heart to purify any emotion back to love. So use this flower to always remind you of how important it is to stay in your heart as much as you can, for that is the way to enlightenment and inner peace and joy. Remember that your default state is unconditional love. It is really who you are. We all love you immensely, and so you should do the same with yourself and everyone else." Then Chamuel smiled and took a step back. Cleo smiled a smile of unconditional love and thanked Chamuel for his gift. Now she understood what he had told her not so long ago. Chamuel turned to take his place at the table. As he settled into his spot, Daniel was waiting to see Cleo. He walked up beside her and nodded for her to hold out her hand. When she did, Daniel dropped something from his mouth into her palm. She looked down and saw a perfect acorn. Then she looked up and smiled at Daniel. Daniel said, "Cleo, my gift to you is an acorn. Not only is it meant to remind you of the special woods where we first met, it is also the symbol of new beginnings, patience, and compassion. You are now on your new beginning, and you will find the most amazing things ahead of you. But the acorn will remind you that patience is important. Like the small acorn will ultimately grow into a beautiful oak tree, it will take years and years. Your journey will also take years, so be patient with yourself. And always remember to be compassionate for yourself and others. You will be learning and changing just like them. Let it remind you of your heart chakra and your compassion for your brother. And let it symbolize the strength of the mighty oak tree, the same strength that is within you." Daniel then bowed his head one last time to Cleo as his antlers followed his movement. Cleo said, "Oh, thank you, Daniel. This is a very special gift and one that I will cherish and carry in my heart." Daniel looked at Cleo and said, "Yes, good. Always remember the power of your heart, Cleo. That is where your true strength and power lie." And then he turned to take his place at the table with the others. Cleo was feeling so wonderful with all her new gifts. What a fabulous birthday, she thought. She looked up to see El Morya running down the path toward her, his feathers flying all around as he stopped in front of Cleo. El Morya fluffed his feathers and then handed Cleo a small hand mirror. Cleo looked into the mirror and smiled. El Morya said, "Cleo, congratulations on your fabulous adventure, and happy birthday. I'm so pleased to be able to see you again. I give you a mirror as my gift, but it is really from your inner teacher. Of course, I know that you can now look in that mirror with love for yourself, and that is so amazing. But it is really to remind you that everything you see is a mirror. First, remember the unbreakable law. What you put out is what you get back. Let the mirror remind you of that often. Do your reality creation consciously by observing what you're putting out. But also use the mirror as a reminder that everyone and everything in your life is there for a purpose. Your inner teacher is showing you things through these interactions. Sometimes those are meant to reflect who you are being in the moment. Sometimes they're reflecting what you could be. And sometimes they're reflecting what you don't want to be any longer. Be aware in every moment, Cleo. That is the best lesson I can teach you." Cleo bowed her head gratefully toward El Morya and said, "Thank you, El Morya. That is a very powerful lesson, one that I will always remember, I promise." El Morya bowed his head to Cleo and then moved to take his place at the table. As El Morya was moving away from Cleo, Fairy was moving toward her. She came with a lovely smile on her face and handed Cleo her gift. It was a small pine cone, one that would fit in the palm of her hand. Cleo smiled. Fairy said, "Cleo, my gift to you is a pine cone, and it symbolizes something very special. You see, inside your brain, between your third eye chakra and your crown chakra, is the pineal gland. Imagine this as your pathway to your intuition, your connection to all that is, and it looks like a pine cone. And the more you use it and activate it, the more of the pine cone opens to reveal new connections to the most magical things. You are magic, Cleo. Never forget that. And use your intuition so that you can see the magic in your life in every moment. Because every moment is magic, Cleo. Every moment." "Oh, thank you, Fairy," said Cleo. "What a thoughtful gift this is. It will always remind me of my pineal gland and the intuition I have yet to unlock, and I promise to have fun with it." Fairy smiled and laughed and then moved to take her place at the table. As Fairy took her place at the table, Gabrielle made her way to Cleo. Cleo looked down to see her coming toward her. Gabrielle smiled and with a soft whistle said, "Oh my, it's so bright here." Cleo laughed as well. "Cleo," continued Gabrielle, "my gift to you is a coin, and on this coin is etched the yin and the yang, the balance of masculine and feminine energy. Carry this coin with you in your pocket to remind you that you can draw on both of these energies when you need to. Use it when you're hesitant to speak your truth, to remind you that you can speak with integrity, using your masculine power of being firm in your convictions and your feminine power of compassion for those you're speaking to. Keep that balance in your life and you can never go wrong." "Thank you, Gabrielle," said Cleo. "It's a great remembrance of that balance, and I will carry it with me always. It will be my talisman for staying balanced." Gabrielle smiled and moved to take her place at the table. As Gabrielle took her place, Haniel flew down from the open sky and with a screech landed in front of Cleo. She was such an amazing and beautiful raptor, and even more so up close. With her bright yellow talon, Haniel handed Cleo her gift. Cleo looked into her palm and laughed. Haniel smiled and said, Cleo, it is wonderful to see you again. I did so enjoy our flight together. My gift for you is a sweet gum ball. This is to remind you of the different perspectives there are to see and our glorious flight through the sky. First, that sweet gum ball looked so prominent from where we started on the ground. You could see the prickly round balls all over the ground. But when we were in flight, those prickly little details just disappeared. Your focus changed from small and limited to broad and infinite. So let this always remind you that there is always a different perspective if you are willing to look. Cleo remembered back to the flight she took through Haniel's eyes and smiled. Thank you, Haniel, said Cleo. That is a flight I will never forget. And the sweet gum ball will always remind me of it and the greater perspectives that are available to us all. My sincerest thanks. Haniel nodded her head and took her place at the table. As Haniel found her place, the sound of music began to emerge. It grew louder and had such a strong rhythm that everyone at the table began to tap their various feet, talons, and hooves. Heads were bobbing, antennae were waving, and feathers were fluffing. Then down the path beside the table, Ezrael came dancing toward Cleo. He was electric, donning a new pair of sunglasses with a stride and wiggle that made everyone laugh. Cleo could feel the music running through her and began to swing her legs to the beat. Ezrael danced over beside Cleo and looked over at her with a big grin. Gotta keep it real, Cleo, he said. Cleo laughed and Bacchus chuckled. Cleo, said Ezrael, my gift to you is a silver musical note charm. It has diamonds, emeralds, rubies, and sapphires encased in the charm. This is to remind you how important it is to dance and sing. It is your joy. And remember, joy is a choice that you can make at any time. Music is the language of your soul, so listen to it and turn up the music loud when you want to get back to your joy. Start your day with a little tune, and it will set the whole tone of your day. And never forget that you can still find music and joy when you're shedding the layers that will come. Cleo was so surprised and pleased with Ezrael's gift. Thank you so much, Ezrael, said Cleo. This is so beautiful. I will wear it with joy. As Ezrael turned to find his seat, the music subsided. As Ezrael headed to his seat, Jeremiah sauntered up beside Cleo. Like Bacchus, he was graceful and smooth as he walked. Cleo smiled at Jeremiah, remembering the race that he and Bacchus had. Jeremiah held up his paw and handed Cleo her gift. Cleo, my gift to you is a topaz gemstone, he said. The topaz is a powerful crystal, and it symbolizes compassion, love, and affection. Let it remind you that compassion and forgiveness will always win over fear and hatred. Like we talked about, everyone is on their journey, and whatever they are doing and whatever you do is the perfect thing at the perfect time. So live your life in love and compassion for yourself and let others do the same. The color of the topaz, the gorgeous yellow and brown, should also remind you of me and my beautiful fur color. Then Jeremiah grew a big grin on his face. Oh, Jeremiah, said Cleo, this is a beautiful stone, and it will indeed remind me of the compassion and love that you spoke about, and I will never forget you or your gracious lessons. Jeremiah bowed his head slightly at Cleo, and then turned to find his seat at the table. As Jeremiah settled into his place, Kalani slowly made her way to the head of the table to greet Cleo. She was so graceful in her movement, it was very calming. When Kalani reached Cleo, she gave her a warm smile. Cleo smiled back. Cleo, said Kalani, my gift to you is a eucalyptus leaf. As you know, Eucalyptus is such an important part of a koala's life, but did you know they have a meaning as well? The eucalyptus leaf is used for purification. It can bring a wonderful cleansing effect as well. In fact, many indigenous cultures, the eucalyptus leaf is considered holy, representing the division of the underworld and the earth and heaven. So you can burn the eucalyptus leaf to cleanse your space as you meditate. Let it be a reminder to you of how important it is to relax, refresh, and be still. Quiet your mind and go to your heart. Practice often, and it gets better and better. Cleo remembered the meditation that Kalani taught her and immediately felt calmer and more peaceful. Thank you, Kalani, said Cleo. This is such a genuine gesture and reminder of our lovely meditation experience, and it smells so good. I will cherish this and always remember your calming influence. Kalani smiled and turned to find her place at the table. As Kalani settled into her seat with a yawn, Lakshmi came to greet Cleo. Her gait was so smooth and she seemed a little more refreshed than when Cleo saw her last. Cleo smiled and said, Lakshmi, it's so nice to see you. Where are your cubs? Lakshmi laughed and said, one of the other lionesses has graciously agreed to cub sit. Cleo nodded and laughed. Lakshmi bowed her head toward Cleo and asked her to remove her gift. Cleo looked at Lakshmi's mane and saw an eagle feather. She reached over and delicately removed it. Lakshmi said, Cleo, my gift to you is the sacred eagle feather. In this indigenous culture, the eagle feather symbolizes the highest, bravest, and strongest. Let this sacred symbol remind you of the courage it took for you to start this adventure in the first place, and the courage that you developed along the way. You can now stand high with your strength and bravery, just like the eagle feather. Remember to keep the strength of what you want in your focus. Do not focus on fear and lack. Your abundance and joy are in your hands and no one else's. Create that abundance and remember that it comes in all shapes and sizes, so never discount anything that all that is sends to you. Cleo reverently brushed the eagle feather against her face. It was so soft. She smiled and said, Thank you, Lakshmi. I can feel the special power of this feather, and it will always remind me of my courage and my power, just like yours. Lakshmi smiled as she elegantly turned and took her place at the table. As Lakshmi settled into her seat at the table, Michael jumped over to land at Cleo's feet. He did one small flip to keep his energy high. Hello, Cleo, and happy birthday. We are all so pleased to see how much you have learned on your adventure, and we honor you for taking that leap of faith. Cleo smiled at Michael as he handed her his gift. My gift to you is a silver charm angel wing. Let it remind you that your angels are always there for you, especially Ezrael. They love you unconditionally, as that is the only way they can love. When you are feeling self-doubt, remember to see yourself through their eyes, and you will then see the true nature of who you are. Know that you will always be protected and always safe with your angels. And have fun with them. They love to laugh and dance and play. They know the true meaning of joy. And when you need a little more courage, reach to them and mongoose spirit. Cleo had a small tear of joy run down her face as she held the angel charm. It was so delicate. Then she looked to the other end of the table at Ezrael and smiled even bigger. Thank you, Michael, said Cleo. This is such a special gift. I will wear it next to my heart, where all of my angels live. Michael's blue glow began to encompass his whole body as he nodded to Cleo. Then he turned to take his place at the table. Thank you for joining me. Have a fabulous day.